morning.
How are you?
It's after 7, so I'm here.
Yeah, you're here. You made it.
Got here.
you
Or I
know.
shouldn't say that. It's a podcast, so whenever it goes out, it's early
It's
for
early.
me.
Well, you know what? I'm gonna bring you to the front of the queue. I've got about 5 locked away on that hard drive there, but I know that you've, because of why we're talking today, which is about to come out, I'm gonna do my very best to sit down tonight after my tour of the hospital, because we're 2 weeks away from having a baby.
So exciting.
It's very exciting, yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Whole new thing.
So we've got the hospital tour, so that when we roll in there in a panic, we don't get lost.
That's actually really
It's
sensible.
a great idea.
Yeah.
I'm gonna take a little video of the path too. You know.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
That is good advice for anyone expecting right now.
Yeah.
I suspect that's awesome. Yeah.
Excuse me. Where was I? Yes. So I'm going to try and get this out tonight.
You are amazing.
Yeah,
That
for
would be
sure.
awesome.
And also, you're the first person to reach out and say, "Hey, I've been listening. I'd like to come on and talk about something." So I'm honoured. This is great.
I mean, it's also a chance to obviously get to know you. But as I was saying before, I think this is there's a gap in the market for
Right.
particularly performers to be just talking about
Hey, listeners,
them.
listen to this part. There's a gap. Listen.
And Big Wonder is very beautifully filling that gap now.
Yay.
But, I mean, we were saying before, there's been some great podcasts in the past that
Mhm.
have specifically focused on performers or the act of, I'm going to say the title of the previous podcast, The Act of Storytelling,
Mhm.
which was beautiful. But again,
Lauren.
Hello, Lauren.
Nice one.
Love Lauren and Nick. But yeah, that's they've moved on to do other things. And
Yeah.
so as a result, there's that gap now of these kind of conversations in the podcast world. So I think it's
It was so interesting that
excellent.
her and I crossed over just by chance through Julia Berg. Do you know Julia?
No, I don't.
Okay, right.
Know of, but don't know personally.
Personally, yeah. So, and when we sat down and it was interesting because I sort of set up the conversation a little bit because Julia didn't want to come on the podcast, but she didn't have the guts to tell me. So we were all sitting around the table, and then I started talking about it, and then she was like, she turned to Lauren, I think it was Lauren, and she said, "Oh, Joshua's got a podcast." I said, "Yeah, the one that you don't want to come on." Like this, and she was like, "Fuck, I hoped you wouldn't bring that up." I was like, as if I wasn't gonna.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Open door, walking through. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
And then Lauren was like immediately like, "So how many episodes have you done? How many are you doing?"
Yeah, she
and I
would've
was
been
and I was like, "Well, I'm doing
straight.
one a week." And she's like, "Oh, how are you able to do one a week?"
Yeah, that's the thing because it's a big commitment.
Huge. But she does a lot of sound editing. Like she'll nip out all the ums and gaps and all
Yep.
that kind of stuff. I can't be fucked with that. Like,
Fair warning, right? Good. So
yeah,
you're
no
gonna-
way.
Yep.
This is how I can keep it going fast is by a real simple edit. I mean, I will crank it up a little bit pretty soon. I had a really good sit down with a mate of mine, Nicholas Clifford.
Mm-hmm.
He runs Truce
Mm-hmm.
production company. And I said, I want to put it into a 2-shot so that we're both in a mid-shot like Joe Rogan's podcast.
Oh, nice.
And it'd be really great, especially for storytellers who are sitting there and, instead of just this wide.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, I think you'll find that your numbers really crank when you've got that intimacy.
Yep.
And Marnie and I were talking about, she's like, do you think that the video is too long to keep people engaged? And I was like, well, I don't think so in the long form world. I mean, I've sat down and watched 3-hour video podcasts, but you're right. What this podcast is missing and what I don't have the time to do yet is highlights.
Yeah, right. Yep. Okay.
I started and it's really labor intensive.
It really is. Speaking as someone who does editing as well.
Right. To just sit there and listen to because I have to listen to the whole thing.
You do.
Yeah.
Yep.
So at this moment, it's the full video and one highlight, but it gets out and it gets done. And I think that's better.
I will let you know that according to stats on YouTube, people are watching longer form.
Totally.
More willingly than they used to.
100%.
And in some cases, they're preferring it to the short form. That's the latest on the stats there. So
100%. And that's why I feel really confident about it. And
Yep.
I'm one of those people who found themselves, I listen to podcasts every day. And that's why we'll sit down and watch, that's why episodic shows and what have you are so much more successful, who have these like Mad Men, like a slow build and a giant overarch because we all commit,
That's right.
and it's great, and this unfiltered place to just have conversations about what's happening in the industry and
Yeah.
who we're loving and who we're not. But
Yeah.
let's dive in because we
Mm.
don't have masses of time. But on why you reached out to me, give us the lowdown.
Okay. So I'm in the process of producing a bushfire relief event
Mhm.
called Shorts Relief Flicks for the Fires. And it is a short film and web series film festival. And it all takes place, not panicking, in on Sunday, March the 8th
Right.
at the Capitol Theatre in Melbourne.
Great.
So, so we're kind of in promotion mode big time.
Great lineup.
It is a great lineup.
Yeah.
We've got basically the idea behind it. I mean, look, I would have been, when was it? It feels like months and months ago. It wasn't. It was about 6 weeks ago. I turned to a couple of industry mates because I used to be the general manager of Melbourne Web Fest back in 2018. So I reached out to a couple of my mates that are still on the board there and just said, look, I've had this thought. I really want to do something for bushfire relief. And I feel like I'm looking around, I'm not really seeing a kind of big coordinated effort from the short form and web series sort of market.
Right. Yeah.
And so what do you think about doing a short film festival one-off with web series? And bless them, they were all like, yeah, okay, we're in, not a problem. So a week later, we're sitting around a table at Balloon Tree Productions, who are one of our event partners. And there was also Claire Frost from The Lost Artist. So it's basically become Incognita Enterprises, which is my production business. Melbourne Web Fest and The Lost Artists are putting all this together. And we just kind of sat and said, okay, well, what are we going to screen? Which is usually the first question. So it was looking.
Do you mean in terms of just what, or is there like a through line of the kinds of things that we're going to screen?
Exactly. It was a case of that conversation, exactly, of what we knew it would be short film and web series, because I kept saying they are not obviously the same, but they're very related.
Mm-hmm.
And there's crossover that happens between both the mediums anyway. Most, you'll find a lot of short filmmakers have often jumped into the web series arena.
Well, because it's a great way that you can expand on that thing and not have to contain it in those 4 minutes and get all your beats. You can sort of milk it out with the same sort of
totally. And look, I mean, I'm also a short filmmaker and a web series creator, so that obviously is also where I'm going to come from. It was like I've done both. I know both communities. Anyway, so we ended up deciding on going for the criteria that it was anywhere between 10 years back so we didn't have an immediate
because I saw Luke Saliba's Lawn in there,
Yes.
and I did his headshots years ago and went and saw some of his other films. Yeah, good lad.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we've got Clayton Jacobson's documentary, The Trainer, about his dad, which was made a few years ago. But they all had to be either unusual in the sense that they'd been branded, and they were sort of the first examples of branded content, or award-winning.
Okay.
And then it was, let's try and get as wide a genre.
Okay.
We did say no to the horror genre, so I'm terribly sorry to all the horror filmmakers out there, because
such a bad thing.
We kind of thought about it and went, there's enough horror going on in real life right now.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And for this, it was like, no, I think we need to probably keep it a bit light. So that was the one genre that didn't get any love. So I apologize, because I know quite a few horror filmmakers.
Right.
So I was like, oh, I feel really bad, because there's a huge, huge community of those guys and they're all brilliant. But we had to kind of go no to that. But we've got everything else but that in the lineup. And so, it's 29, I think, projects that are in the lineup. And then, we've also got people like Michaela Bannis and Ditch Davey and Alan Fletcher and Toby Trueslove and Chris Kirby, who are all coming in and presenting the different filming blocks for us. And who basically, they're mates and friends of friends that I just picked up a phone and went, what are you doing on the 8th of March? Because, I mean, this has been put together so quickly, but it's been extraordinary to see the response from the industry. It's been really heartwarming just to see people go, 100% going to be in it. Like, that's awesome. Thank you for asking. To the point where we started and we did an invitation of saying, send us your films to different people. Word started to spread and people would just emailing saying, can I submit stuff? We've actually got enough where we could have probably done the entire long weekend.
Okay, wow.
Of film and web series content. So much stuff. And it was all Victoria only as well, which we decided to make it a Victoria only focus. I mean, I just said, damn it, if I'd realised there was this much, we could have done a full-on festival. Mind you, wouldn't have had time to organise that much, really.
Yeah.
But yeah, we had I think it was nearly over 12 hours worth of content that we could have programmed in the end.
Wow. Do you want to just bring that mic in a little
Oh
bit
yes,
closer
sorry,
to you?
I'm leaning back. I'm
Sorry,
leaning
yeah,
back.
I'll have to deal
I
with
used to
mic
be on
bleed
radio.
later.
You'd think I'd know better. Anyway,
Yeah.
sorry. Yeah, sorry to my radio mentors. Hope you're not watching. But yeah, so that was extraordinary. And then of course you feel bad because you can't screen everything. It's
So it
a
was
hell
all
of a
word of,
process.
like it was all invite only or word of mouth? Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. We
Yeah.
just figured that would be the quickest way.
Quick way. Yeah.
You know, and again, submission process and stuff. We just wanted to get it going as
Great.
fast as we could. So that's what we're doing on March the 8th. So tickets are available now.
Great. Good.
Get to shortsrelief.com and you'll find all the information.
I'd love to go for sure. That'd be great.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's looking like it's going to be a really fun day. And look, the Capitol Theatre have been amazing. They waived their venue hire fee so that we would have more money in
Legends.
the kitty for the
Yeah.
charities. We're raising money for Wildlife Victoria and the Victorian Bushfire Appeal.
Okay. So that's where it's headed.
That's where all the money's going. And we're partnered with Humanitix for the tickets, and they obviously take a booking fee, but they're donating the booking fee to the Red Cross Bushfire Appeal on our behalf. So all the profits from it go to the charities. So it was great. The Capitol went, yeah, great. We're happy. We'll waive the fee.
So how many tickets are available then all up?
It seats 570.
How does that
So
break
few.
down across the day? Like you've got how many films playing across?
29. We've got four blocks of films. So
And each and it's all in the same cinema. I have never been
Yes.
to Capitol.
Yes,
and
it is.
they all can sit up to 500.
Yep.
Wow.
absolutely.
That's crazy.
I know, right?
Yeah.
We've also got a panel that we're putting together talking about the use of imagery for change, social change. So we're getting our last couple of people locked in now for the panel.
Okay, wow.
But that's talking to documentarians and filmmakers that are also involved in environmental or wildlife causes.
Geez, I'd love to come along to that. I don't know if you've listened. I harp on about it a lot, but the film that I'm working on is about anti-poaching in the Kruger National Park.
Nice.
Yeah,
Yes. Yep.
and about expats who are out there.
Yeah.
Trying to save the rhinos and elephants and the whole. So I'm in that final stage of just tweaking it and now looking to chat to people about that and a good friend or a new friend of mine. He worked as a documentary maker and filmer for Al Jazeera and what have you.
Oh, okay, great.
And he is punching out a bunch of projects, and he's got a mini series that he's written that's like right on the edge of being greenlit and done a lot of stuff out in the Emirates and Afghanistan and Africa and what have you. But I'd love to come along and listen to that panel.
Yeah, it's going to be it's interesting. Because again, it's something what you're just talking about. Something that I'm also worked in documentary. In fact, when I worked at the BBC, I worked in the music and arts department, which is factual, in London, and it is extraordinary the power of doco. Ultimately, not just to inform but to entertain.
Mm-hmm.
We are endlessly fascinated by our fellow humans,
Mm-hmm.
but also when it comes to causes, that thing of finding that emotional connection to the story because it's real life.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's it's so powerful to be able to shift people's perceptions or to make them take action or whatever else, which is kind of what this panel is also addressing. How do we use that? What is it that we as filmmakers can do to actually do something positive, and particularly now when you look at the bushfire situation that just passed and you kind of go, okay, guys, climate change is real. And if you didn't believe it before, you better believe it now, please, because what the hell?
It's not fucking around either.
No, it's not. No. Mother Nature can be a cruel mistress. And
it's still summer. It's 10 degrees right now.
Thank
and
you.
It was, pouring rain yesterday with thunderstorms and 40 degrees the week before or something like that.
That's right.
Yeah.
And if you screw around with the environment, you will pay the price. Sorry. And so it's that thing about the frustration everyone's feeling about the inaction of governments and this whole fossil fuel bloody industry debate where you just go, stop it. Like it's actually more profitable to be investing in renewables anyway. You've got Goldman Sachs that just said, right, no, we're not investing in any more fossil fuel industries. JP Morgan's just said the same thing. These are the two big investing firms in the US. It's like, why are you all
why are you
still
holding out?
Why are you doing this? Why are you subsidizing these industries when Wall Street and other big financial markets are pulling away as rapidly as they can? It's all ideology. And you just go, right, well, how as filmmakers can we be contributing to the conversation? Maybe not yelling at them because they obviously don't listen to that, but showing people what is actually going on in a way that hopefully sinks in. Like that's, and what can they do as individuals,
Yeah.
therefore,
I
going
have
forward?
two things I want to throw your way.
Mm-hmm.
You were talking about the documentaries and the power of them because they're, it's a real thing that's happening to real people and there's a relatability and what have you. But I do find that, and I can only draw from my experience of trying to write this film that I'm writing, and one of my objectives with this film, and I use the example of the film called The Cove. Did you ever watch The Cove?
Yep. Mm.
The fucking most heartbreaking thing
Mm.
that I've ever seen. Even it's still even worse than the stuff. And I hesitate to say this, but the stuff that I've seen about the rhinos, there was just something about the way that film was put together. About Taiji, I think the bay is.
Yes.
Anyways, I found a lot of people wouldn't watch it because they knew what the content was.
Yep.
So what I'm trying to do with the park is sprinkle that cinematic storytelling over a real thing and preface it with like a foreword and what have you, so that it spreads the audience a little bit.
Absolutely.
So that, you know what I mean?
Yep.
And that I feel would have to have a more, because often documentaries, I find, I could be wrong, preach to the choir a little bit. The already converted goes, oh, I'm already interested in that. I want to, you see, like, if you're a bit afraid of like stranger danger or, fucking serial killers and what have you, if you're not watching that How to Make a Murderer or whatever,
right.
you know what I mean?
I do.
So I'm really curious about that, and I'd love to hear what these people have to say about the power of documentary, and then, merging the fictional narrative with real stuff and shining a bigger light on things like that. And the other thing was, what was the last thing that you were just talking about?
Climate change, government inaction, lack of investment in the fossil fuels. Thank God.
Yeah.
It's gone.
That second one's gone. It'll come back.
It'll come back.
Yeah.
But I think the thing is too, there's a fine line between educating and preaching.
Yeah.
And Shakespeare Republic is my web series. So I work with Shakespeare text and put it in a modern circumstance. And we have people in the cast like Nadine Garner and Michaela Balance, Alan Fletcher, Scott Major. Drop. But also that's why quite a few of them are actually going to be hosting at the Shorts Relief thing,
right?
Because they're my cast and my ensemble and mates. But that was the big question that I put to all the cast. What do you want to say to the general public about a current issue that we may be able to find a corresponding Shakespeare text for? And so you'll find in Shakespeare Republic we're quite political.
Okay. Yeah.
But we have to be careful. And my rule is you can't change the dialogue. So there's no modern text. It's got to be Shakespeare's original language. You can edit slightly if a monologue's too long or whatever, but other than that, you can't change the text. Well, I do all the writing anyway, so that's the rule. They have to learn the full text. But B, it also needs to make enough sense that we can drop it back into the play if we wanted to.
Okay.
So they all do monologues at this point. Season 3 we're currently developing. We're actually going to be shooting this year, and that will be bringing scenes in, and it's a slightly different take again on what we're doing. But up till now, the first 2 seasons have been monologues. And so a really good example of reaching out to an audience that might normally look at something. And it's interesting because you've got audience that would never look at Shakespeare because they just go, old, yuck, don't understand, don't want to look.
Yeah.
And then if they know it's got an agenda of any kind, it'd be like, oh, you're just preaching, whatever, not going to watch. So a good example of one that really, I mean, they all work, but one that really worked was Christopher Kirby playing Sir Thomas More, which is from Thomas More, the play Thomas More, which has recently been, in the last 25 years, identified as an Elizabethan writer's room that wrote it.
Right.
So there's 8 writers, including Shakespeare, that wrote this play.
Shit.
which is awesome.
How do they work that out?
It's looking at their writing and their style and working
Wow.
out who wrote what. So they worked out that Shakespeare wrote, I think it was 3 scenes or 4 scenes definitely, and probably collaborated on more, but the ones that were clearly his. One of them is what's known as the refugee speech.
Was that rare for him to collaborate?
No, not at all.
Oh, okay.
They
I don't
all
know much
did.
about him at all.
They all did. They all did.
Right.
Look, Shakespeare, yes, he wrote the plays. Did he collaborate? Yes. And was it official? Not so much. It would have been a lot of sitting in the pub and going, I'm really stuck on this
Testing
bit.
ideas.
And a fellow writer going, well, have you thought about,
Yeah.
oh, brilliant.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's right.
Let me get my quill.
That's exactly correct.
Yeah.
But he did also have apprentices that worked with him,
Okay.
that shadowed him, particularly towards the end of his career. And he also co-wrote with Christopher Marlowe. So, which everyone's like, they were enemies. Like, no, they weren't.
Oh,
they were
okay.
collaborating. Like, they were clearly collaborating to the point where it's the Henry cycle of plays. They've worked out they actually co-wrote them.
Okay.
Again, looking at the writing of the text and going, well, actually, there's a lot of Marlowe style in here, and he wasn't emulating Marlowe. We think Marlowe was actually writing this. So yeah. But in the case of Thomas More, he wrote a speech that's known as, that Thomas More makes, known as the refugee speech. And it's basically saying in the play, it's saying to the mob who are saying, throw the Jews out of London, they're all evil, blah, blah, blah. Thomas More says, how can you say this? If you say this about them, what's to stop someone saying this about you down the track?
Yeah.
And how would you be a stranger in a strange land?
Yeah.
Where you were getting this kind of response, where people were, what, you're going to murder them, you're going to throw them out of their homes, you're going to kill their children. What's to stop someone doing this to you now that you've done this to them? Which is really a forward way of thinking. It was never performed in Shakespeare's lifetime.
Oh, right.
Possibly because it was seen as slightly seditious.
Okay.
Because colonization was happening.
Uh-huh.
They were marching into other countries at the time and doing just that. But we did that in a modern setting of Chris Kirby as a politician, and Chris is an American actor who's based here in Australia, permanent resident. But we did it that he was talking to a parliamentary committee who were talking about closing the borders and throwing refugees out. And that resonated so strongly around the world. We were getting emails from people saying, I've never watched Shakespeare, and I watched it just because that intrigued me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm actually watched the whole series now, and I'm loving Shakespeare, but I'm also loving how relevant he is to now.
It's I think it's one of the best tools, and I just remember what I was going to say before.
Excellent.
To get a point across to anyone, anywhere, anytime, but you have to be very good at it.
Yep.
Is to put the shoe on the other foot, but you have to do it in such a way that they don't know that they've been taken on that journey until they're there, and they go, and they cannot deny the place that they just landed.
Absolutely.
And they're like, fuck.
Yes, absolutely.
You know?
100%. Yeah.
And the other thing I was going to say was, we were talking about how do we get the point across about just found this little stain on my pants that's caught my eye. Chocolate or something.
Chocolate or something. Awesome. That's fine. Usually that's me. So, well done being the first one rather than me being the first one. Go on. Yes.
There was a book that was written in the 80s called The 100th Monkey Syndrome.
I've not read it, but yes, that title sounds very familiar. I'm trying to work out where I've heard it. Anyway, go on. Yes.
So I read it when I was a kid, funnily enough. My brother had it, but it's about collective consciousness.
Yep.
And they use the example of a scientific thing that happened where, and I'm very, very loosely taking the facts out of this, but isolated monkeys on an island worked out something that they hadn't ever worked out before.
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Right,
Crack
go on.
open a nut or something and find the fruit.
Mm-hmm.
Millions of monkeys, let's just say, on this island all start doing the same thing at once.
Yep.
That collective consciousness spreads. Monkeys around the world start doing the same thing with no ties. So that the message was, if everyone around the world started thinking about disarming nuclear weapons and getting rid of them, that maybe the governments would.
Mm-hmm.
That didn't work out. But
no, because I think they're cut off from the collective consciousness deliberately, to be honest.
They're in a bunker somewhere.
I reckon, yeah.
But that premise applies 100%. And
Totally.
I mean, even just like the vegan movement, the spread on that, I mean, is quite incredible. So let's hope that there just comes a point where there's just too many brains thinking about climate change is real and we're going to stop this.
Exactly. And I think I do think that, yeah, absolutely, as filmmakers, we totally have an influence on that. We do, and in a way, a responsibility, I guess. It was funny. Someone asked me because I tend to look a lot at a lot of my work. I mean, obviously, I'm an actor, but since I've got into writing and directing, a lot of my work looks at history and then looks at where is it relevant to today for either lessons on what does work or more often lessons of what doesn't or what went wrong or what we need to be reminded about. So I think, yeah, and I mean, look, I've got a World War II project at the moment that's looking at women's roles on the home front, which is it's it's fictional but based on actual stories. Um, where that came up actually well before the Me Too movement took off, but it was this thing about women were contributing hugely to this country and basically running the country. And yet all we know about them from that period is they sat at home and knitted, socks for the troops. And
Well, there's even
they
more
didn't.
films,
They did
made
a lot more. Yeah.
about American women and what they did
Yeah.
than there is, they'll be doing the same here.
Well, I wrote a play about it back in 2004, and it was from meeting one of the women who'd served in the army.
Oh, right.
Where I just went, what? Anzac Day parade. Gosh, yeah, it would be around that time. And this it was great. This woman kept running out of the crowd who would have been in her 70s and hugging all these guys that were marching. And it reminded me of all that footage we've seen of, the end of the war and D-Day. And so when the war was announced as over and everybody was out in the streets hugging and running, it just reminded me of seeing that footage. I thought, I've got to go talk to that woman. Who is she? Like, what is going on there? So I went up to her while it was going on and I said, you clearly know some of the guys that are marching from different units as well. What's your connection to this? And she said, oh, I served with half of them. I went, what? Like, excuse me? And she said, oh, well, I was in the AWAS. And I'm like, I need to know what the AWAS is. Yeah, I had no idea.
Yeah.
And she said, oh, it was the Australian Women's Armed Services. And I went, okay, I'd never heard about it. And so, of course, that's what I found out. They were an auxiliary service, but they used to man gun posts at the top of all the buildings in Melbourne for the anti-aircraft stuff.
Yep.
And a group of them.
Border Patrol.
Yeah, absolutely. And worked with the night wardens and stuff because we have blackouts in Melbourne every night as well during World War II, particularly in 1942, which is when I've set this piece. But then also she and some of her troop were sent to Papua New Guinea to guard the foot of the Kokoda track.
Wow.
Because they ran out of men.
Yeah.
Never heard of that.
Me neither. I mean, I guess my grandma was, well, both of them were, I don't know what my mum's mum was doing, but I think that my dad's mum was a teacher.
Right.
So she was teaching the kids that were left behind, and that was that.
And dealing with air raids and dealing with trenches being dug in the school ground undoubtedly and dealing with having to wear gas masks, all that
maybe
stuff.
not in Perth, where I'm from, but
actually,
they had all the tunnels built in the hills around Mosman Bay and what have you, and the cannons, and Rottnest was a big
Rottnest would have been huge.
Yeah, they have cannons all through there and army barracks and what have you.
But you know what I mean? Like, yeah, exactly.
Yes,
And this is the other thing, good point that you make. Around the country, there's different experiences.
Totally, yeah.
Because it's such a big country. But, Darwin was flattened 34 times during World War II by Japanese bombers. And
no one talks about that. Nah. I mean, Australia gave us a little insight, a film, and I was like, did that really fucking happen?
Oh, it happened, yeah. And they kept it quiet because they didn't want to panic in the populace.
Jesus Christ.
So no one was told about it. I've been reading all the redacted reports they were available online through all the government things now, reading all the redacted reports about what was going on. And you just go, man, they actually drew a line across the center of the country and said, if the Japanese invade, we'll give them everything from that line and up.
Fuck off.
The demarcation line. And it was MacArthur from America when he rocked up who went, you are absolutely fucking crazy.
No.
You're not doing that.
Yeah.
And that's when he moved his whole thing up to Brisbane so that he could actually defend the top end of the country. Because the Australian government were just going to go, have that half. It'll be fine. Yeah, because they'll see the border and won't cross it.
You gutless fucks. Yeah.
Right? It was extraordinary.
Have you watched it's a documentary. I want to say it's like, I should know this because my mum's lived in East Timor for about 18 years now. Something, it's not Courage Under Fire. I know what that film is, but it's something like that.
To that, yeah.
About the 60 soldiers that landed on in East Timor. Do you
Yep.
know that story?
No, I know there were Dutch troops there as well at one point, but yes.
So there was about 60 Australian troops that escaped from wherever, landed on the shores of East Timor, and the East Timorese at that point sheltered them and hid them from the Japanese for like 6 months or something. But eventually the Japs came in and pushed them for their location, and they slaughtered 60,000 East Timorese to get these Aussies, and they never gave them up.
Extraordinary.
And then, the through line of that was how quickly we gave up East Timor to the Indonesians.
That's correct.
But that's fucking.
I know.
So where are you at with that film then?
Well, it's been turned into a miniseries now because it started as a play, so that's been performed back in 2004, and then I kind of put it in a drawer and thought, I really want to put that on screen at some point, and then it was giving it to a couple of other writer mates, and actually I work I'm faculty at Howard Fine Acting Studio, and I work a lot with Howard Fine and David Curry. I actually gave Howard a copy of the script of the play and just said, because I was looking, I think maybe I'll redo the play. So I just gave it to Howard and said, any feedback would be great, because he directs on Broadway and stuff, and he's got a really good eye for story. And bless him, he came back to me and he went, oh my God, I never knew anything about any of this. This is amazing. And I don't think you need to change anything, and have a think about, putting it on again as it is. And I went, no, I want feedback. It's like, please. It was lovely, and I love that he loved it. I mean, look, he gave me. He said, "Oh, okay." In that case, so he gave me a few tips, but that was essentially, that was a lovely reaction and a surprising reaction. And then I thought, oh, of course, anyone outside of us. I mean, we don't even know in Australia, so why would anyone outside of Australia know this story? And it is really fascinating about these women and what they were doing here and abroad. And then I gave it to my former boss at the BBC, who's now the CEO of the British Library. He was out here at the State Library, and we had coffee, and I talked to him about it, and he just said, Sal, that's a mini-series. And I went, oh.
And what a perfect time to have that long form that we're talking about, where people are going to engage for that whole story.
Yeah.
And it needs to be that big. It can't be compressed into...
It kind of, it's compressed at this point into 90 minutes on a stage. And that's the thing.
Missing major beats.
Hugely. So now we're expanding the world. So look, it's in... I would say development stage for miniseries still. We're still writing it.
Still, okay, cool.
But we need to, have that conversation. I mean, I've talked to Screen Australia and others about it, and they've gone, okay, well, when you're ready, come have a chat with us. So that'd be good. I mean, we'll see.
Yeah, if you had written that as a miniseries back then, you wouldn't, like, the momentum that you've got now for a story like that is incredible.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's right on point.
Yeah.
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 Oh, that's great.
So this is where we're at with everything else that, I do. But I'm intrigued to look at that and go, guess what, guys? We've done a dance like this before. Can we also remember exactly what you were saying about East Timor? What the loyalties that we should probably have in a world where borders are closing, where people are becoming more insular, more isolationist, I guess, and just look at America and what's going on there again. And it's happening here clearly, and has been for a while too. It's like, you know what? That is actually how countries start to fail, when you start cutting yourself off. But we've also
internal erosion.
Totally.
Yeah.
But also, we've got all these pre-existing relationships with our neighbours. Why are we not honouring those better? Better. We can do better.
Yeah.
Ultimately.
Yeah. Well, if we've got fuckheads like ScoMo running things,
Scotty from marketing, which I did laugh. That became a hashtag. I thought, and I'm worried that he actually thinks that's a badge of honour. But anyway.
How did we go from I mean, like, I don't get into politics, and certainly not a giant tangent that I want to take, but how did we go from having an atheist female prime minister
right.
to this fuckhead?
Yeah.
And that video of him and the fireman who wouldn't shake his hand, I mean, that just says it all, bro.
It really does. Yeah, it really does. But then the fact that he had the fact he had to employ an empathy consultant kind of tells you everything.
And he's a total schizo.
Just that he's
not connected.
He's not connected.
You've got to be connected.
You're not connected. Yep, that's the problem. Complete disconnect. And complete disconnect because it's easier. It's something, actually, getting back to the bushfire relief thing too. As human beings, we are naturally geared to avoid pain. We just
mm.
are. It's reptilian brain. It's
Yeah.
yep. Ouch, that hurts. Don't do that again. Right?
Yeah, it's what it's there for.
That's exactly correct. And unfortunately, in a modern world,
You can't.
yeah, we've got to actually resist that natural inclination
Yeah.
to not look, to not engage, to not, because unfortunately, pain's still out there. And we also, I think, as time has gone on, hopefully, if we think we're evolved, I'll tell you what, you read Shakespeare and you look now and you go, we haven't changed
We
in
haven't.
400 years
No.
and probably 2000 / whatever years. We haven't changed. But yeah, we have a responsibility if we're in a position where we can help to help. And it's interesting with the bushfire thing because, of course, the fires are out. Thank God. They're done. But the recovery's just started.
Yeah, and that's huge.
And it's going to be a really long, hard road.
Yeah.
The wildlife numbers alone are horrifying. And all the ones that are injured and and lost habitat. And oh my God. And then you look at all the people that have been, again, they've had to relocate or have been, moved from where they live because they've lost everything. I mean, it's just horrifying and not fun to think about. But that's what we're trying to say to people with the bushfire thing. I mean, it's been funny. People go, oh, but the fires are out. So it's like, no, that's not, that's not the point.
Yeah. The big cost comes now.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, most people get it, but I have had the odd comment where I just look at them and go, you do know that this is recovery is where the expense comes in, right? That's where the money's needed is
People
now.
People are so fucking retarded. I mean,
well, they just get, again, it's that thing. They just get blinkered on their world and how they're affected and presume that's how the rest of the world's operating. Since the smoke haze has obviously reduced because the fires have stopped, we in the city aren't getting directly affected. So there's this thing about, oh, well, that's finished now. Good. It's true. I mean, that's right. Back to my life. Most people get it, but as I said, there are a few that just don't. You just go, okay, you need to start. I'm sorry. I know you probably don't want to read the news, but just start looking at the news a little bit. Just realize there are people now that there's lots of good news stories, which is great. We need that positivity, but also within that, we need to help them still.
I mean, and you do need to manage how much you invest your brain power into the woes of the world too.
Yes,
so you've got to find a nice balance so you're not coming home wanting to slit your wrists.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I don't watch the news services on commercial television. I can't do it. I
never
can't do it because of the bias, usually.
Yeah, just the fear mongering, and it's just negative, and I'm just like, oh God, no thanks. I like to keep, and not, and I don't mean head in the sand either.
No,
but
just you got to be careful with how much exposure.
I mean, just use your brain. Like bad shit's happening all the time. Like, be a little aware, but Jesus.
But at the same time, and as creatives too, I think part of our job is to be not, got to be careful how I put this, not rose-colored glasses. That's not what I'm saying. But we need to know especially if we're making any kind of commentary on society, what is going wrong, because that feeds us. But I personally feel we're also the ones. We're not just the canaries in the coal mine.
Right.
Fossil fuels. Anyway, we're not just the canaries in the mine. We are also the ones that bring hope. So it's not just about saying, there's a really big problem here, because that is important. That's an important part of it. But I think we need to also, well, this is, again, my opinion, be part of the solution.
Yeah.
As much as be the ones highlighting the problem.
As much as we can as well.
Yeah, exactly. Because I've always, maybe that's, I don't know, maybe that's my upbringing. I grew up in a family of activists.
I'd say that's a pretty safe assumption.
I remember being 6 years old. Oh my God. And being dragged out by my grandmother to go and at Seaford Foreshore with placards to protest they were going to knock the foreshore down, like all the trees down. Right. And sitting in a council meeting in Frankston Council, which is, I grew up down that part of the world, and with, again, about the same age. I mean, I might have been exposed to it, but it didn't mean that it engaged me, because I remember sitting in this council meeting at 6 and they were droning on about something. I don't know what it was, really boring to a 6-year-old. And from the public gallery, I come out with, Gran, can we go home now? These people are boring. At the top of my lungs. She was horrified, got me out of there so quickly. But it was true. I mean, this is the thing. But I was exposed very young. And my grandmother also worked with battered wives, as it was called at the time. I was getting pulled out of bed at 3 a.m. to go and rescue someone from Housing Commission flats whose husband and they had gotten into an altercation, and grabbing the wife and the children and taking them away to a shelter. Like,
Erica's mum does something very similar.
and it's needed, unfortunately.
Yeah, 100%.
It's needed. And even back then it was needed, which is
more now
tells
than
you,
ever, I think, by the sounds of it.
well, it's interesting, because I was exposed to all that quite young. I guess when you're younger, you kind of think it's everywhere, and but it feels like it actually is just getting talked about more.
Right. But we're also we're more information is landing on us all the time. Like,
Yep.
So I was listening to I listen to Dax Shepard's podcast quite regularly. Are you familiar?
Yes.
Yeah. And he was talking about, he talks about his kids a lot and living in LA and what have you. And he'd recently done a lot of research, and I didn't listen to the fact check part of the episode, but they were talking about like fears of, I think he had a guest on who was living in New York and had 2 kids, and how do you feel about your kids walking around and blah, 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 blah. And he was talking about, he said, statistically and the crime numbers and what have you, when we were kids is way worse than it is now.
Totally.
And yet parents are fucking crazy about protecting their kids from stuff that isn't there and are doing more damage.
Yep, I'd agree with that.
With this generation of children that are becoming adults who have no fucking grit and no like out in the world problem solving skills and what have you. Just navigating the streets on your own for a bit with your bike and going through the park and meeting other kids and all those interactions, like gone. They're just sitting there on their fucking iPhones and iPads. Drives me insane.
I know, it's scary.
Yeah.
I mean, I was in New York a couple of years ago. We actually, oh man, I just went, this sounds so self-aggrandizing. Anyway, we were there for festivals. That's all I'm going to say. Anyway, we were there for festivals with Shakespeare Republic, and we were in New York for a week. And
what year?
2017,
okay.
November. I remember.
Yeah.
I'd been there 2000, maybe 2001 was the
I
last.
used to live there 2014,
Oh, did
2015.
you?
Yeah.
Right. Well, I'd been there 2000, 2001, and I remember feeling very unsafe in the city, which is for me unusual.
Just before or after?
Just before.
Right.
Interestingly, I remember feeling very unsafe. I was on my own, navigating New York on my own.
Really? Because I went there in '99 for the first time.
Right.
And I felt very unsafe because of what my dad had told me when he was there in the 80s, and he was mugged and blah, 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 blah. And when I got there and I started to look around, I was like, hold on a second. This place is amazing. And everyone just wants to say hi and be nice. And that was when Giuliani was at the height of his time as the mayor. And he had cleaned the city up, and it was coming around to being the safest capital city in America.
I was nearly mugged there twice.
Is that crazy?
Yeah.
See, I remember walking
2 years later or whatever. So yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't come back again until 2005, and it was the same vibe then. And maybe you just have
a really good vibe.
Maybe.
I don't know.
Maybe.
Because I do wonder, was I screaming tourist when I was roaming? I don't know. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, I avoided it because my spidey senses are so heightened in that situation. So I kind of tweaked that something wasn't right and went, don't walk down that alley. That would be bad. Go back onto them. But because I lived in London for 5 years. So
worse there.
Actually, and that's the weird thing. I feel totally safe in London.
Right.
So, but it was interesting going back in 2017 because I felt the difference. It was very much what you just described for yourself when you were there then.
Right.
And I remember there was a mate of mine. We were doing a live stream from Times Square going, hey, we're finally in New York. It's amazing. Hello to everybody, all our fans of Shakespeare Republic. We love you. We're here. And I get this message on that video from my friend, put your phone away. You're going to get mugged. I'm like, okay, there's a policeman standing 3 feet from me right now. I don't think that's going to happen. It's okay. Don't panic. But I kept noticing that everyone seemed much more relaxed. Still had the New York chutzpah, still had all that stuff, but much more relaxed. And I thought, that's weird. I feel a total shift. And another friend of mine, Phoebe, who was also in the series, she joined us in New York, and she grew up just outside of New York. And she said, I can feel a total shift as well. It's a very different vibe. We get to LA and basically we're chatting to a bartender at the hotel we were staying at, and he was from somewhere different again. But he said, "Oh yeah, New York have banned guns in the city."
I did not know that.
And I went,
That must have come
oh,
after my time.
yeah, it did. It's
Mm.
only been in the last 4 years or something. Yes. I know,
Go New
right?
York. Yeah, they're
Exactly.
so progressive compared to the rest of that country.
But that means people can now yell at someone for cutting them off in traffic like they do and not get shot.
Yeah. Awesome.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Which means everyone relaxes. Hello.
Yeah.
And evidence, by the way, you can actually have
Do it.
laws around firearms that no one's going to feel like their liberties are being infringed upon.
Yeah, and let's have a look at the first year after that's brought into play of the drop in death by gun.
That's right. And apparently it is now one of the safest cities as a result.
Yeah, well, it continues to be. I mean, I remember 2014, 15 when I was there, and there was a couple of hardcores saying, that they were a bit over that, and we're like, oh, New York's lost its grit, and it's like,
New York's lost
I'll
its
take this,
grit.
thanks very
God
much,
bless
man.
them. Yeah,
You
thank
know.
you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they were losing tourism.
Yeah.
That was part of the problem. People were freaking the hell out about being there.
I remember me and my buddy came blazing out of a bar, fucking, off our gills, and like 4 a.m. and like asking, random dudes in the street for information and stuff like that. And this one guy said to us, he's like, you know what, you're really brave coming up to us and asking. We're like, really? He's like, yeah, once upon a time, man, you wouldn't be doing this. And this was 2009.
Yeah, right.
So it was just interesting. And I was it was my buddy's first time there, but I was aware of the ever-growing transformation of New York City. So I knew that we were safe.
Yeah.
At least I thought we were. But
I think, to be honest, again, part of it is also your approach. I mean, if you're coming at it with a certain energy, I think
totally what you put out there, you sort of bring. I've only ever once in my life had a physical altercation out and about, because my mum always used to worry that I'd be so blind and I'd get beat up and blah blah blah. Cause I used to get spasticated when I was younger, and I was sober, just coming out of work in Perth to get McDonald's for dinner and to go back to work.
Yeah.
So it was in that 15 minutes that I walked around and 4 Samoan fellas came and just started kicking me.
Oh, wow.
And I never got really, really hurt. I got, my nuts got kicked a little bit.
Wow.
But it wasn't super bad.
Okay.
But it rattled the shit out of me. And I was
would.
like 19, and I was this tiny little stick of a thing back then, about 22 kilos lighter than I am now.
No.
So I was and I'm not a violent person at all.
No.
And there was 4 of them. And Samoans are big.
They are.
That's the only time in my life I've come even remotely close. It was really strange. It was so out of the blue, and I was more shocked and rattled by just the experience than the actual kicking. Like, I wasn't bruised or anything like that. But it was funny because I think he kicked me like twice, and then just sort of went, oh, I'm not going to get the thing that I was after here, and just kept walking.
Bloody hell. So is this just
It's like 8 at night.
Randomly just picking on anyone that crossed their path?
I remember I had McDonald's in my hand, and he goes, eat Macca's in front of me, you cunt.
Wow.
And just kicked the McDonald's out of my hand, and I just turned my back, and he just started kicking me.
Jesus.
Right?
Okay.
Like, people everywhere.
Great. So that's just a really bad day, and you happened to do, I don't know, wrong place, wrong time. That's
just the lesson. Don't eat McDonald's. It's bad for your nuts.
Health. Bad for your health on many levels. Oh my good God.
I'm just going to check the time quickly.
Yes, sorry, because we've just been chit-chatting.
No, that's good. Where are we at? Oh, that's great. We've got plenty of time.
That's kind of insane.
That's fucking bananas.
But look, that's the problem too. That's just, oh, yeah. I'm such a I'm such a utopian. I'd love for us all just to get along.
Wouldn't that be
do our
nice?
thing.
Yeah.
Get along. But we don't, because we're human.
Are you a Jim Jeffries fan?
No, actually, no. I know of, but I haven't looked at much of his stuff, actually.
Man,
I know I have to. Right,
you
okay.
have to.
I need to have a notepad or my phone or something so I can make notes here, because I'm going to get an amazing reading/watching list of stuff from this.
Jim Jeffries, obviously stand-up comedian, and he's got his political show. I don't really get into that.
I'm trying to think if my partner put that on one of his... Does he have Netflix? Did he do a Netflix?
Yeah, he's got like maybe 3 specials.
That's what it was. Yes.
Yeah, and he had a big spray at Trump before he got elected and all of that kind of stuff.
Man.
But years ago he had this thing he was talking about the 10 Commandments or whatever, because he's anti-religion. And he's like, you don't need 10 Commandments. You just need one. Don't be a cunt.
It's so true.
It's really simple. Just follow that and everyone will get along.
That's right. That's right.
So
it's
true.
completely true.
But you need to check out his gun control bit. That's what made him super famous.
Yeah, that's what I think I've seen of his, because I'm pretty sure that was on the video that Billy pulled up at home.
Probably, yeah.
And yeah, look, I'm all comedians. Thank God for comedians.
Right.
Thank God for, and again, back to Shakespeare, but the tradition of the fool speaking truth to power.
Yeah.
Which is what the modern comedians are of that lineage. And the fool were the smartest people in the room, but played the fool and could speak. And the fools came from the bardic tradition, from the Celtic bardic tradition, where bards had so much power in their storytelling that if they wrote a poem that was negative about a leader, the leader would be deposed by the people and replaced.
And what time period?
We're talking back in the Druidic sort of time. So we're pre-Viking invasion.
Yes.
Pretty much.
I have a druid tattoo actually on my back there. It's called an Orwin, I think is the correct pronunciation, but it's just about balance. But
yes.
Yeah. And it's like sort of Stonehenge type times.
That's it.
Yeah.
Well, Scots-Irish background.
Right.
There is Danish kicking around there as well, and a bit of French.
German and
no, because we're all just bitses at the end of the day.
If you're white in Australia, you're a mix of European and British Isles. Yeah,
pretty much. So yeah, there's another script I'm working on which deals with the bardic and druidic traditions, and also brings it into the modern context, because that's what I do. But anyway, yeah, that's what modern comedians are, the bards of the present. And really, obviously their power's lessened to a degree.
I wish they had more.
So do I.
I
got a lot of really great comedian mates, particularly political comedians, that I just wish to God had more influence.
I think Bill Maher probably has a pretty good.
It's true.
Good leverage on things, and Joe Rogan is becoming a fucking powerhouse.
I know, right?
Yeah. If you're on his show and he says something good about you, you're on.
Yeah.
And if you're on there and like what's his name? Chris Kessler, the fellow who got nailed in that Game Changers debate.
Yes.
Woo! You're never going on the podcast again. And your business probably just took a major downturn. And he didn't even say anything bad about him.
No.
Just got himself chewed up by a fucking combative trainer.
Well, exactly. But this is what I mean. I think, look, the comedians, deliberately won't be given much power, but since the internet came around, suddenly that's opened up another freer forum for them to have a platform.
Right. Well, how about what's the face? The Aussie, I always forget her name. It's not Stella, is it? The woman who raised all that money.
Oh no. I know her name.
What's her name?
That's so bad. That's gone out of my head. Celeste Barber.
Celeste.
Yes.
Good save.
That's all right.
Yes. Yeah, it's that's an incredible amount of sway just from an Instagram account. I know she's done other things,
which is hilariously funny. I have to say,
so good.
It really is hilariously funny. I've been following her for quite a while because it's this is awesome. But yes, I think that surprised even her though. That was crazy how that
surprised everyone.
Went so wide
I'd
so
heard
quickly.
When it was like 50,000, I was like, wow, that's incredible. Over what is it? What did it get up?
Over 51 million, I think.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So many great people chipped in masses. I think, the Leonardo DiCaprio Foundation threw down $3 million on it or something like that, and which you would expect him to.
He's started his own foundation now too to help with the bushfire crisis.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
This is the thing though, and that's a great example of humanity at its best, when people are that moved that they want to do something. And also, interestingly, kind of get caught up in a movement. That was a movement.
Oh, everyone wants to be a part of the movement.
Very quickly became a movement, and people wanted to be a part of that.
Yeah, that's the three parts of our nature is we need community, certainty, and love.
That's right.
Yeah.
And that was such a great example of all of that.
Yeah.
And That's why she was completely gobsmacked, I think. And of course, then the problem then that she was
This
facing,
trust thing that she's
yeah.
got going
Well,
on.
because the issue is, and look, I totally know that she would have been coming from a very authentic place when she said, "Oh, I want to try and get this shared around the various places." But it's the legal implications. So,
Mm.
it all ended up going to the Rural Fire Service as it was supposed to go. And then there's had to be all this negotiation around,
To get it
can
spread.
it be spread around? And are they going to have to, what was it, disincorporate and then reincorporate as something else to be able to do it because they're a charity and they couldn't actually pass the money on, and Facebook.
Can't they just donate?
No, they can't.
What do you
Charities
mean?
can't do that legally.
Ah,
You have to
okay.
be, I think it's an endorsed charity to be able to do it, and they weren't. So that was the problem she faced. And so all good intentions, but then as soon as, of course, bless her, that she said, I want to make sure this gets spread around, then found out the legal problems, and that's what caused the trust issue. It's like, that's not actually her fault. She legitimately did mean that. It's just they hit legal issues. But I think I'm hearing that's getting looked at now.
There has to be, right, in a state of emergency like this, where the powers to be can actually just bylaw for that moment to make it happen.
You'd
It's like a
hope.
president's pardon type thing.
I'm hoping.
Surely.
I don't know. I mean,
Queen can just fucking make it happen.
just get Liz to come and say something. And
yeah, just send the Governor General down and say, listen, dickhead, just fucking sort this out.
we could do that with a few things in this country right now, really. We could do with that help, I think. But yeah, I mean, but I think that was extraordinary. And again, as I said, it shows the best in human nature. We generally, it's kind of, in a way, that's really life affirming, I think, that it shows we're still capable of empathy. We're still capable of coming together in that way. So that tells me that even though we're all on our devices and in our little worlds, that when the chips are down, everyone kind of either through that device, which
right,
is
so
helpful.
that's the upside.
That is the upside.
Yeah, and you have to, well, I believe I do myself, you have to regulate to make it an upside.
Yeah.
So anything that's nonsense, anyone doing this with a coffee cup in their car, looking at their makeup job, gone. Anything that's cat video, gone. But anything that's about change or that's about arts that are coming out, sculpt your whole feed to be about science and arts and humanity.
And you
as
can.
opposed to, you totally can. You just got to be on it.
When I first started web designing, because I used to be a web designer,
Right.
I still do it. I mean, I did the site for Shorts Relief.
Looks great.
Oh, thank
Yeah,
you.
it does. Yeah, it flows well.
It really helps that WordPress have made life a lot easier.
Oh.
Because I swear, as soon as they brought PHP programming out, I was like, I think I'm done now with the web design. I'm not learning another programming language. But I started back in the day when the internet was here, but it wasn't nearly as popular as it is now, and we didn't have social media. I know. It was a utopia. I can tell you right now, it was a utopia. And being a designer, I was part of the international design community. So we kind of all knew each other, and because it wasn't that big. And so we had, God, back in the day.
Going back.
Oh, no, I'm going back. I feel so old thinking about it. But and it's not that long ago. That's what's kind of interesting, seeing how exponentially it has just exploded. But we had things like awards for design, for content on sites. We had panels, all done voluntarily. No one paid to be looked at for awards. Nobody got paid to go and assess them. It was done out of community, fostering good work on the internet. A lot of creatives involved in the process, a lot of writers, that sort of stuff. Obviously, designers. We'd give awards. We'd go and have forums and message boards back in the day where we'd talk about issues around exactly what you're saying. How can we bring more art to the net? How can we bring more storytelling to the net? All of that sort of stuff. And I was part of a group that doesn't exist anymore called Internet Brothers, which now would be shouted down for being misogynistic, but it wasn't.
Ordinary people. What is it? What did you say it was called?
Internet Brothers.
Internet people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know, right? It was actually the literal dictionary definition of brothers, which was a fraternity, which again, patriarchy, I know, but it was meant group of people. But it was people that wanted to bring storytelling to the net in a positive way to have positive impact. And I remember the guy who ran that saying, it won't be long now until the net as we know it ceases to exist, because more and more people are coming online. And unfortunately, humans are our worst enemy. We're our own worst enemy. And we're going to get a replica of what's going on in the real world happening on the net. And it may get worse for a while too.
Right.
because everyone's behind a keyboard, not face to face.
This is this whole simulation thing where we have this constant creating a virtual version of everything.
And he said it'll get worse and then it'll get better, but it'll have to get worse first because it's human nature.
It's typically what seems to happen. And
And
that's
it
what I was
did.
going to say to you before. It's such a shame that all of these actions only ever come after the fact. And the fact is generally pretty fucking bad.
Yeah, I got to say, it was there was a while there where I was doing that when I was a lass, you know, with the internet, because watching the way people spoke to each other, I mean, that blew me away that people could be that cruel and be okay with it.
Yeah, because I don't have to stand in front of someone.
Whereas I'd grown up with the net, but I had grown up with the net where there was a hell of a lot of personal responsibility. You did not what we used to call flame people. You didn't. I mean, now trolling is what it is, but you
Right.
didn't do that because if you did, the community would ostracize you.
Yeah.
So they would say, "Oi, you get a warning. Don't do that on a message board. Don't talk to people like that. This is
Right.
respectful.
Mhm.
So if you've got a different opinion, that's fine, but you've got to do it
Yeah,
respectfully.
don't be a cunt.
Thank you.
Yeah,
And this is your warning. And if you do it again, you're out."
you're gone.
And then they do it again and they were gone.
Yeah.
So the community self-regulated. But of course, then everybody comes online, which is great on so many levels. But it also means that the self-regulation just doesn't.
It's too hard.
Well, it's too hard. How do
Yeah.
you do that?
I got my first troll
Oh,
on this podcast.
what? Are
Yeah.
you kidding me?
This one guy, I can't tell you his name. I want to say it's David.
No, well, whatever.
David,
Don't
mate,
give him any
move
credit.
out of your mum's house, get out into the world. You know, having an obscure DVD collection is not all there is in this life. But he
Yeah.
jumped on my first one, which was with my mate. Do you know Anthony Sharp?
Yes. Not again. Not. I know all these people, but I
Yeah.
don't personally know them. Although I might have met Anthony actually. Now I say that. Anyway, go on. Yes.
Been in it 20 odd years as
Yeah,
well. And
exactly.
was on The Voice and Miss Fishers and what have you.
Yes.
Our first podcast and my first one, I put it out there and he's like, "Oh, it's very blokey." And I was like, "Well, it's two guys talking." So, you know, and then the next one, what was it the other day? It's just hysterical. He goes, "You get this big thing about how my picture on the podcast, the title shot, the font reminded him of this obscure play from the fucking 50s that no one's ever heard of, and the red writing on that." And I was like, "Oh, I think this dude's actually come around." And it's like, "Oh, is it this one?" And I found the play and I sent him the picture and he's like, "Oh, yes, that's it. But I wasn't referencing anything good. I was just saying that your font is really bad and I can't read it."
Okay. All I'm going to say is it David?
I think it's David.
We see you and we hear you, and your opinion is important. But it's okay. It's okay to have a conversation rather than an attack.
Yeah. Or just not speak. You know, didn't someone ever say if you haven't got something nice to say, don't say it at all?
Well, that's actually correct. Yes, I was brought up with that as well. But yeah, quite often it's a case of just wanting to be acknowledged.
Yeah, but
that's where it comes from a lot of the time. I got to say,
look, for sure. So
David, sending love. Okay, we hear you, and yes, your opinion is important. But how about you do your own podcast?
Yeah, or just say something nice.
Or say something nice. Exactly.
Yeah.
Start a dialogue rather than a one-way. Just say something and run away.
Yeah, well,
don't do that.
I think the first comment that this individual made, if it is David,
poor thing. He'll be very upset now if it's not David.
Wait till I get the
know
spray
you
off
are
this
going.
one.
That's right. You know you're going to get a thing about the name wrong. But anyway,
we thanked him, Anthony and I said, "Thanks, mate, for your input. That's really, really helpful." And that was it. I would I would never engage in anything negative ever.
I don't think there's there's no point. I mean, I'm going to knock on wood here. I've occasionally, only very rarely, had people that come in and attack. But when they do, as you know, you come back with love because that's what they're missing
100%
in their world.
And it is the only way
and it's hard
to handle that.
It's hard because you want to go, oi, because I'm an Aries, so fiery as all get out. Redhead, fiery as all get out. But it is that thing of going, okay, take a breath because someone's hurting right now.
100%. They have a story. They're not like this because everything's great.
No.
And they're because when everything's great, you're just not bad. You're nice.
Well, when everything's great, you don't feel a need to do that kind of garbage.
Yeah,
And you're probably not even,
it just
commenting
doesn't
at all.
enter your fucking head, you know. And there's a
Oh,
whole series of events that led that person to that place.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And look, I mean, yeah, I've recently dealt with someone who wasn't nasty, but was very much telling me how to do what I do.
Right.
Older male.
We all know what
Okay,
you're going to
here we
say.
go. And yes, I had two choices. I could either go, how about you just get the fuck out of my face? Or I could go, I'm really hearing you. I gather you don't know my background.
Yeah.
I'm just going to give
Instead
that
of-
to you now so
Yeah.
you get where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
But I'm also saying your opinion is valid.
Yeah.
You make good points. Just know that I'm happy to have a dialogue, but I'm not in the market for a mentor.
That's a great way to say it. Yeah. And did they catch it?
Yeah, they did.
Okay.
Which was interesting. I wasn't sure if they would.
Because that's
All I got was, oh, well, I'm glad it could be of help. And then they disappeared.
right.
So that was that.
I had a recent situation. It's not situation's probably too aggressive, but I work as a real estate photographer when I don't do this.
Oh, that'd be interesting.
Well, it's this trickling effect because vendors are highly strung.
Yes.
Not all the time.
Mm.
There's a lot of money on the line and what have you, and that trickles down into the agent, and then the agent can come onto the job, and they're full of anxiety about how important these photos are and what have you, and they start telling you which angles and these are the better angles and blah 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 blah. And I was there one day with someone I've worked with a couple of times. Like I know him. And his sort of superior is standing behind him and he's going, okay, so this and this and this and this. And I'm just sort of smiling at him and I'm catching the other agent's eye. And the agent goes, Tony, I think he's got it. You know, like this.
Yeah.
And it's so good. And he's like, oh, yeah.
Oh,
But
bless.
you're like really just.
Bless. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anxiety. It does a lot of damage.
Totally.
Yeah.
And that reminds me of something, and you have had extensive experience in this, is that the whole unwritten, it's actually probably written law of don't ever tell another actor what to do when you're in a scene together.
Yes.
I was recently on a student film and I'm still filming it, so we're in two parts. But the director, I'm playing a director in this student film.
Okay.
And so the director is asking me, how would you direct her in this scene, because it's an improv scene.
Right. Okay.
And I sort of said to her, I said, look, I'm happy to engage in that question, but just so you know, I know that you're new to this and it's a final piece, but this is kind of stepping into territory that we're not supposed to step.
Yeah.
And the other actress was like, I really appreciate you saying that, because, and we're both like, yeah, we don't do this. And you know, and it didn't play out and what have you. But this actress did say something interesting, which I thought was interesting, and that I felt was grabbing hold of that idea a little too strongly. And because I turned around and said, unless you get your big break and you're sitting next to an A-lister and they want to tell you how you could better do the scene, you fucking listen.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
She's like, I wouldn't.
Wow,
like,
really?
You'd be fired. You know, like I was like, as if you wouldn't listen. You're sitting doing a scene with Meryl Streep and she says, do you know what, sweetheart? If you did this, and this would be amazing. Sorry, Meryl.
Well, yeah, but actually, I do have to say something. Having worked with a few, and you will too, I've never encountered anyone actually do that to me that's in that position. However, that said, in breaks, them talking about situations on set or their career, that's where you find you learn from them.
Right.
I'm just thinking, I have one, no names because I'm not going to, but one, what would be called an A-lister here, attempt to direct me on set. And the director stepped in and said, stop.
Oh, good. So that's as he should.
Because, well, it's disrespecting the director just quietly to do that.
And the writer.
It's implying that the director's not able to get it across to me what they need. So I've not had any A-listers do it, and I tend to find they don't, because that's a respect thing.
No,
But that said, it's interesting she said, well, I wouldn't, because would that mean that if you were in a break and they started having a conversation about, like, about their own experience, would you suddenly go, "Oh, I'm not interested in hearing that. I've got work to do." That's when I'd be like, "Shut up! People are speaking that have
Yeah.
got a hell of a lot more experience. I want to
Listen.
hear it.
Yeah.
I want to know." But yeah,
I don't know. Like if I was, yeah, and I don't think that she honestly believes what she said.
I don't think so either.
And
That
she
sounds
was
like a
a good actress, good
platform.
person. I'm not giving her a slam.
No.
But for me, like, I guess it depends on the caliber of the A-lister and or their place in that production.
But but again, okay, sorry, yes, taking your that, there'd be no harm in having a lean over and kind of got any tips.
100%. And if
Like,
it's not so much a direction as it's just like a technical thing.
Yeah, totally.
That's because I've heard, what's the woman who won the Oscar for I, Tonya, the supporting actress? Older woman.
Oh, one of my favorites, Alison Janney.
She was talking about being on The Hours.
Yes.
And Meryl Streep was there and she said, I'm going to do you a favor. And because they had a kissing scene, she goes, when I come in to kiss you, I'm going to pull your face back like that, just slightly, because of the way they've got these lights. I'm going to give you 10 years back. And
God,
she
that
was
woman.
like,
Love her. Yeah, that's right.
Right?
Love.
You don't go, no, don't touch
Oh
me.
my God. No, absolutely. Yeah, exactly. So
Little things.
that is actually highly invited as far as I'm concerned. Yes.
Yeah.
And I have worked with actors in that context who very, quietly have just said, just be aware. Just be
Technicians,
aware the
yeah.
lights here. Just turn your face slightly this way. Yeah. Oh my
Yeah,
God.
not how you should do your scene.
No.
But just little things
The
like that.
technical stuff, particularly the screen, 100% yes. Please give me the information.
I remember listening to Renee Zellweger when she won her first Oscar for Cold Mountain. She thanked Tom Cruise in her speech.
Yeah, she did.
And it wasn't because he was just so nice to work with. And she mentioned specifically how much he had taught her.
Yeah.
Because he's like I mean, apart from being a great actor, he is like a total technician.
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, movie star in every sense of the word, and has learnt how to really use that medium.
Fuck yeah.
To its nth degree. Yes, absolutely. This is it. And also just observing people on set. I mean, the stuff you can learn just watching people work. I just think, aren't we in this to learn?
Yeah. And listen.
Thank you.
Yeah, people's fucking egos get in the way and what have you. And then there's another time, when you know your place in terms of the hierarchy of things. And like if I got offered this as my first offered role for this student film.
How exciting. It's awesome when that happens.
It's great, and they had seen all of the Stringy Bark footage, so they knew where I was at, and they came to me originally casting, and I said, look, that's great. And I've talked about this on the podcast before, so I won't ramble on. Anyways, I said, look, I don't audition for student films anymore. It's not because I think that I'm better than you or anything like that, but I've done my bit, and I don't have the time. But if you want to give it to me based on what you can see, great.
Yeah.
And they said to me, what is it that you want from us? Like what is your expectation on the set? And I said, other than just not being a prick, just allow me to express my thoughts on each scene and how I feel maybe it could go this way or go that way. And I'm totally respectful of how you want to run it, but I also appreciate that this is a student film and we're all working things out for the first time. And I am a photographer and have been for 20 years. So I do think about things compositionally I follow storylines in terms of shots. That's how I think about it.
Yep.
So I might say to you, like, I want to run in it from this way. And if you blah, 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 blah. That's all I ask, is to give me a shot to do it one way and we do it your way as well. That's all at that level, of course, when I'm not getting paid and what have you.
Yeah.
This is how it makes it the most for me, is if I can really run on my instincts.
Yeah,
absolutely. As
absolutely.
opposed to being told no. And they're great. They're being really great.
Oh, good.
Awesome. They're really, really, really
Look,
great.
I'm finding, I mean, I'm the same. I maybe take, it was 3 projects a year that are student based. I've kind of dropped it down to 2 just because I'm doing a lot of other stuff. But again, if a really good script comes across my desk and I have a look at the directors involved in previous work and I kind of go, oh, I really like this. Okay, look, let's do it.
I can help them out. Yeah.
And not even that. It's also like, great, this could be fun to play with. Because again, I think when we're doing student films or even, independent films generally, if you're getting to play a role that you've never got to play before, or you get to, do something different as well, like
Yes.
that's what's exciting about that stuff.
100%. This is set in the 70s.
Oh,
So
that is so cool.
it's great. So, and unfortunately, I had to shave it off. Sorry, Bridget, but I'm trying to grow it back because it's about an editor, a female editor in the 70s,
Right.
who's making or was editing a documentary which I have directed about divorce in Australia in the 70s.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But her lead interviewee has gone missing,
Okay.
and she finds through one of the offcuts a little bit of footage that I didn't realize was rolling when I make a pass at our
Oh,
lead
wow.
interviewee, and then she pieces it together and confronts me. But they shot all of that footage on film.
Oh, my goodness.
So then
That's
now they have
awesome.
to process it so that in the film, when Faye is editing,
Of
she
course.
has real footage to watch. So we don't shoot it again till April. And so I have had this big moustache, and then I got an audition through the other day, which is the first audition that I've had that I can't speak about. But it was massive.
Yeah, right.
Massive. And there was
How many NDAs are being sent out for everything these
Yeah,
days?
yeah.
It's great. Yeah, go on. Yeah.
And it's for a major, a very well-known character, and what have you, he just does not have a moustache, so I had to go.
That's
So,
yep. Sorry.
and that's okay. Happy
Paid
to,
work.
that's it. But I reckon that's probably a good place for us to wrap it up.
Probably.
I've got a shoot to go to, and I'm sure you've got a day ahead of you.
I've got to do some more work and emails and stuff for Shorts Relief. Just gonna say that again, shortsrelief.com.
Yeah,
Come
and
to the Capitol on the 8th of March, please.
8th of March, shortsrelief.com.
Tickets
8th
are
of
on sale
March.
now.
Tickets are on sale now. And what's the sort of price on that?
$30 full, $20 concession.
And that gets you
Everything. 6
for the day.
hours.
Oh, wow. Okay, great. Yeah, that's a
Everything.
done deal. I'll be there.
Yeah. Yay, that'll be so much fun.
Thanks so much for coming on, man. I really appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you. It's been fun. Yay.
See you, mate.
See ya.